Welcome to the Sound Gaming Podcast, a D&D conversation brought to you by Cascadia Gamers Alliance. I'm your host, Brendon Faulkner. With me is my co-host,
Kyle Morton.
Hey Kyle, start the show.
Yeah, of course. But first, I need to touch on something. Last week we featured an awesome person by the name of Chris Hunt. We forgot to actually tell you how to find him. If you want, you can find him on Twitter, and then also make sure to find his newest Kickstarter, Shipworks, live now and taking orders. Now, on to the show.
What are some positive ways to communicate?
Being honest about a situation, but not putting your bias into how you say it.
How can you be honest tactfully about a rough situation?
Using the word, in my opinion,
Sure.
a lot.
Yeah.
Sure.
I felt.
I
took it as.
don't blame.
Yeah.
It's like, when you said this and you made me feel, when that was said, I blah, blah, blah. And
Right.
I think it was this way, asking for clarification.
Sure.
Did you mean it in this way? Was that how you were trying to make it sound?
Yeah.
Because if they just say yes, then you're like, okay, peace, bye.
Yeah.
Okay,
Like-
you are a dick. Thanks.
Right. But
Thank you for confirming that.
I feel like there's 100% of a reason to forego blame.
Yeah.
There's never a reason to blame
Right.
for someone just being who they are.
Sure.
You might be compatible with it, or you might not be.
Sure.
And oftentimes, the only way to figure that out is to ask without assuming.
Right.
And I think that's a great way to get into a position where you're able to intercept what could be a lot worse of an assumption when,
Sure.
okay, great. Now that I know what you actually meant, we can move on, and I'll take that into account the next time that this might happen.
And this is why Kyle is my wise Buddha of the group.
No joke.
I'm really not.
He so is, though. He's our super calming presence all the time.
Is this not? So in my head,
Yeah.
this comes across as like, well, why wouldn't you do it this way?
Okay, because you're talking to two very emotional speakers.
Yeah.
Who sit here, instead of thinking about what they're going to say, just say it with
Yeah.
the emotions running hot on them.
Yeah,
true.
okay. I can understand that.
I completely understand and agree with you 100%.
But this
In the
emotions,
moment, do I want to do that? No. Not at all.
and this is how people are when they're in campaigns. Like, yes, you have the text of I'm swinging a sword at this thing, but there's also the subtext of I don't feel good about swinging this sword at this
Yeah.
thing because you made a decision to go hunt the lich when we're level 3.
Yes. Yes. Right?
I cannot roll my eyes harder. Yeah. That kind of is a direct correlation
I know.
to like one of the biggest issues I had with my first
Yeah.
campaign.
Yep.
Letting vocal players ruin the story.
Yeah.
Not even so much ruin. That's a really strong word.
That is. And that's
What-
in a very opinionated
Exactly.
word, too.
Like I'm sure they thought the story was great.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But having brought something up could have changed the entire outcome.
Yeah.
Spoken up in character. It's like, oh, why would we need to go back to that place? They have a whole army for them. Whatever.
And like I think that this is something that folks who are playing D&D maybe don't have enough of a conversation about.
Right.
Like that's really why I wanted to kind of bring up like some of our history, some of like our previous conversations up, is because sometimes we are the kind of people who were nerds in high school and didn't develop the same social skills that maybe other people have in other hobbies. Maybe that's an overgeneralization, but if the shoe fits, and for me it does, and it's worth talking about. It's worth talking about like kind of the health of relationships and like getting to the point where the fun of the story is the highlight of your day and the highlight of your week, and
Yeah.
making it be a thing that you can pass on to other people. Like, you shouldn't be passing it on to other people if you're struggling with it on a daily basis, and you're not gonna want to. And it's the one thing that I'm more passionate about than probably any reasonable other definition, I guess.
Right.
Is D&D is, I've said it recently, it's I feel the new oral storytelling tradition for our generation. And like developing a healthy community around D&D means some introspection. Like, sometimes we need to look at ourselves, and sometimes we need to say, what are you doing with your life?
Right.
Yep.
And I think it's a good place to kind of have some of these conversations.
Well, and you think about it, D&D is such an incredibly social game.
It is.
Even if you are choosing not to socialize with these people outside of this campaign, and even if you're choosing not to socialize with them as yourself, you are still socializing with them as a character.
Absolutely.
Like, that is part of the game. You can't escape that.
Yeah.
Like, even if you're just doing like some hash and slash fun dungeon or something,
Sure.
you guys still have to cooperate and decide which way to go or something. There's still that communication that has to happen. And I think it's just funny how, this game that, all of us nerds play, who are a bunch of shut-ins who don't like people, play one of the most social games there is.
It's true.
Yeah.
And it's it's the best. It's everything that's the best about my life right now. And anything that I can do to help equip other people to have that same passion is something that I'd like to pursue with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like, I think that's largely a huge part of what this podcast is.
Yeah.
Like, we want to reach out to others, because like the conversations we're having here are conversations that have come up elsewhere.
Yeah.
And so we...
Or maybe should have come up elsewhere.
Right, exactly.
And they didn't really have like the groundwork to deal with it, or the tools to kind of get into it.
Right. And then it's also like maybe one person thought it was a necessary thing, and no one else was in that same state of mind.
Yeah.
So I think it's nice, at least in our ability here, to grab as many kind of opinions, at least between two very different mindsets.
Yeah.
And then when Stephanie's able to join, that's also a third very different mindset. So it certainly helps, I think, having this conversation. But I digress. I'm happy that we're having conversations like this. It's something that I thoroughly enjoy doing, because it gets stuff out there in the open and puts the spotlight where it sometimes really needs to be, but might not ever end up otherwise.
And that's not all this podcast is today.
No, of course not.
Like we had several conversations with a couple of people. We're about to have another conversation with another person.
Yeah.
Talking about kind of more of the meat of the game. I got to talk to Tarye. And he is just about to, actually, I think he might have already started by the time that we're recording this, with the Curse of Strahd campaign.
Oh, yeah.
And like I got to talk to him a little bit. I'm going to ask you guys some of the same questions that I asked him, just so that you guys can get some of the context of the interview. So he's all spun up on the idea of doing a gothic horror campaign. Gothic horror is wonderful. It's great. I love getting to insert genre into D&D. That's a thing that I've strived to do in the past, and I'm probably going to keep doing it because it's a whole lot of fun. I actually have a level 1 to 3 module that I'm working on right now that is a noir genre. Like, you show up, you're a detective, like you're like you're figuring things out. There's the classic moments where you have an office and somebody comes to you with a problem, like,
my husband's missing.
It's exactly that.
Yeah.
So she talks way more sultry.
Yeah.
This wasn't a she.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't.
He talks way more sultry then.
Why did you?
The person who comes asking for help always talks sultry.
Oh goodness! Here we go.
So I can get back on track in my mind.
Sorry.
So one of the questions that I asked him that was kind of fun to hear his answer on was why vampires, right? I have a hard time like thinking about doing a campaign based solely on vampires, even though I love horror. I love creeping my people out. That would be my draw for doing Curse of Strahd. I have a hard time like trying to think of why vampires are cool.
They're just so classic.
The concept of a vampire is that it could be anyone around you.
Okay.
And you won't ever know until you either get way too close, and then it's too late anyway, or until they're like waking you up and saying, hey, you're my thrall now.
Sure.
And there's the concept of some people really want to be a vampire.
Sure.
Versus others were like, man, I think it's an interesting concept, but I don't know. Like, there's so many different ways to think about. So
if I were to push you to get into like the honeymoon phase on this, like what would be exciting to you to run Curse of Strahd? Like what is your hook into that?
I would want to be a vampire.
Oh, okay. So like as the DM or as
a player.
As a player.
I would want to,
okay.
As a player. When I speak,
like a secret.
Yeah, I want to be a secret vampire trying to hide it from the other people.
Okay.
How much do you know of Curse of Strahd?
Almost none.
Okay.
Like, I have not read Curse of Strahd at all. So
and you have, like, no history of Strahd, anything? You're Ravenloft.
I'm very, very, very low.
Know what Ravenloft is?
Ravenloft is like a...
No, that's good.
Yeah, no.
Just so people know where you're coming from.
So this is... I know nothing of Ravenloft except the name and the general overarching theme. And even that understanding is largely because of the murder mystery we did for Halloween.
Sure.
So that was the closest to Ravenloft I've ever played. And I know we met the Raven Queen during All the King's Men.
Sure, not related, but that's okay.
Right, but that's something different entirely, and that might not even
completely
be the
different.
same
Not
concept.
at all.
So I virtually nothing of Curse of Strahd and Ravenloft,
okay.
aside from overarching concepts.
That's great, and I love having that voice kind of added to it because like when I was thinking of the question, I didn't even think of it in those terms, but that's cool. Like, and it's a good take. Like, I could see where a player would fall in love with the idea of having a secret identity.
Oh, I already have. Like, I want to do this now. I'll name him Vlad.
Because that's real original.
Yeah.
Vlad you can't be Vlad the Impaler. It has to be Vlad something else.
Oh, no, it's just Vlad.
Okay.
Oh,
just Vlad.
No, that has to be just Vlad. It's not Vlad. It's just Vlad.
Well, yes. The full name is
just Vlad.
Jack.
Yeah, just Vlad.
Well, the full name of Justin Vladimir.
Okay, sure.
However, just Vlad, or sometimes people shorten it to JV.
There you go. Love it. I love it.
Never quite made it to varsity.
That's what I was just going to say. Beat me to it.
What's this? Sports joke in a D&D podcast?
I like
whatever.
sports.
I like sports for other people.
Go sports.
Go my favorite sports team. Anyway, but yeah, so like...
Hit a field goal.
Stole another basket unit.
Stop it.
Thing.
Stephanie, same question.
Oh, what draws me to...
If you were to consider running a Curse of Strahd campaign, what would be your ticket in? Like, what would be your hook?
Running or playing?
You can take it either way. I kind of want to ask you as a DM since I just asked him as a player.
Well, I like vampires. I've always been very much like Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah.
Always loved Dracula. And then, like, I think it's a little bit different for girls, maybe. Like, we're raised, or, or media is geared towards us
50% of romance novels involve vampires.
Yes, that vampires are these sexy beasts, man. And you want to with them.
Super old guy that wants to be a predator.
Yeah. No.
Age is just a number.
No, and you know what?
Whatever.
To be honest, like there is, I will say, let's say 80% of romance novels out there is 100% a dude being a predator first.
Yeah.
And then the chick falling in. And like, why do we find that hot? Who the knows? We got some messed up crap in our heads. Don't get me into society and all that.
It's probably more fun to read about it.
Yeah.
That way you don't actually have
to experience it.
Yeah, like I think there's a lot of different aspects in humanity that make you curious about stuff.
Do you think that like those statements are applicable to Curse of Strahd as it's written?
I haven't read the entirety of Curse of Strahd.
Okay.
But, like, I'm very familiar with Strahd just because he's been around forever.
Yeah. He's a cool throwback character.
100%. And I think that's what attracts me to it, is that, like, I know, like, I've known the name Strahd for as long as I can remember.
Sure.
And so, you know, that throwback is cool to me. What else draws me to it? I don't know, because I have thought about running it. I don't know. Like, I've read the first, I don't know, so many pages of it.
Yeah.
It just has, like, some really cool, like, and even, like, the first, I'm sorry, I don't gather my thoughts before I talk. Like, because I have played, my dad ran for my family.
Oh, Kurt?
Yeah. A couple of times ago that he was here. He ran.
I mentioned his name because he's going to be one of our interviews.
Yeah, Dad. He ran the murder house. That's part of it. So we just did it like as a one shot, and oh my god, it was so much fun.
Yeah.
So I just think Curse of Strahd is just well written, also. Sure. But I like vampires. They're hot.
That's cool. I don't know how I feel about that, but yeah. Do you think that running a Curse of Strahd could be a good campaign for female players then? Like, is that...
Yeah, but I think it's good for either, though.
Yeah, because then one of the players can be the hot vampire that the females are chasing.
No, Strahd is the vampire.
No, this is fantasy.
He wanted to be the vampire.
Hey, whatever.
He's I mean, if everybody wants to chase me, you know, whatever.
It's like they might be chasing with pitchforks and stakes, but whatever, they're still chasing. But no, like...
No. Can I give away spoilers for Curse of Strahd?
Yeah, I don't care.
Sure, it's been out. The book's been out for a while.
I'm not.
But there's an option that Strahd does, like turn a party member.
Yeah,
like,
I would be. I would volunteer.
There's a side character as well that is the girl that we are all imagining who is in love with vampires. Yes.
Well, no, there is the girl that he wants, and she does not.
Yeah, but there's the other girl too.
Yeah, maybe I haven't made it that far.
Yeah, there's a girl, like, she's just pretty and dumb and like walking through life. Well, maybe not dumb, maybe charmed. Yeah, she's been charmed to the point where it's just like her day in day out existence is being in love with Strahd.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I feel like when you encounter that character, it's more of like, oh, honey.
Oh, honey. Yeah, 100%. Oh, sweetie. He doesn't feel the same way about you.
So, like, wherever there's a vampire, there's going to be an awkward love triangle. Sure. Like, that's just kind of how that works.
So, I think for my entry point as a DM, the thing that I would do is incorporate pop culture, like I always do. To me, if you're talking about vampires, you're talking about universal movie monsters. So...
Oh, see? But you've read Curse of Strahd?
Yeah.
I don't see where that would fit in.
As the players. I would have the players
Okay.
roll up a mummy, a Frankenstein.
It's so weird.
A Wolfman. Yeah.
I would probably not want to play in that campaign.
Really?
Really.
And I'm kind of the same. Well, but we've had this discussion where, like, I'm very much I don't know how to describe it. Because I call it high fantasy, where it's this, but you also call yours high fantasy, where like everything goes, where I think of it as I'm a more of like traditionalist. I like my fantasy to be a little bit relatable enough, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a campaign basically being like Helsing or Hellboy or you know, like one of those, like that kind of feel could be a really fun adventure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like running around as the creature from the Black Lagoon, like built over top of like a sea elf, would be a whole lot of fun. Like you could like mix those over. Like you could have a Goliath be your base race for Frankenstein, or Frankenstein's monster.
Okay, so now I have to ask, there, who would be a mummy?
Okay, so mummies, high constitution.
Maybe you could prematurely lichify somebody. That could be the mummy.
Yeah. I mean,
a playable race lich.
I think that there's room for maybe a rogue wolfman would be pretty freaking awesome.
There's already a shiftling.
A changeling, yeah.
You could be a changeling, and your changeling form is a wolf.
And shifters. Shifters, like, just
there's
part
also
of their body
werewolves.
Right,
Yeah,
I don't think there's a playable character of a werewolf.
And there's blood hunters as well, like, that's pretty common.
You can make werewolves and, like, werebears and stuff like playable characters. Easy.
Yeah, a monstrous character.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or you could make a golem, I guess.
Is that what Not started as? Before goblins were actually playable?
Yeah. Monstrous race.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what I mean. I probably will do that as a one shot for Halloween this year. I wanted to do it last year, but I didn't get a chance to.
So what I meant by is I wouldn't play that as a ongoing campaign.
Yeah.
I would totally jump in as like a one shot and just 100%. To see how it goes.
Yeah.
Sure.
But like I don't think I could ever get the type of honeymoon feeling that we're talking about in a campaign. That's...
Challenge accepted.
Right. Yeah, you can try. If you can excite me about that, then maybe I would be very impressed, and I would be like, yes, you are a amazing DM. You already are, but that would even put you up a notch higher.
Part of it for me, like where I came to those ideas was like reading the flavor text for Curse of Strahd, because when you're in the demi-plane, which is what Ravenloft is, I'll kind of give you that world, how it actually works. It's separate from Faerun, so it's not actually in 5e.
Okay.
But it exists in a demi-plane just kind of outside. You can't leave it. You can't do any like interplanar stuff to get out. And the spells appear differently. Like when you do Mage Hand, it's like a ghostly like skeleton hand comes off of you.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, or when you do Toll the Dead, like a giant death knell rings. And it that's so there's all this other kind of like flavor like inside of it. And
that is really neat.
You know, even if I were to not make the players be those characters, I would then like make either NPCs or monsters as those players, because I don't want to live in a world where you have a vampire but you don't have Frankenstein. Like I don't think that would be as fun for me.
Barovia. Gosh, I couldn't remember.
Yeah, Barovia.
I couldn't remember to save my life.
That's the name of the country.
Yeah. The country that
so
it
the plane is
okay.
Ravenloft, and then the Barovians are the ones who live in
under Strahd's shadow.
So you referenced this whole start to pop culture.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a poor understanding of what pop culture is or what it relates to, but my immediate thought when I think of vampires in pop culture,
Twilight.
Sadly, that's one of them. But and then even like True Blood.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
There's
I'll get on with the
there's
first
not a
4
mummy in
seasons of
sight
True Blood.
or Frankenstein
Yeah.
in True Blood. There's werewolves.
There are
But
werewolves.
there's very often the whole lichen and
Yeah.
the vampire pair.
Underworld.
Like Underworld is and then
which is a direct ripoff of White Wolf.
yeah. So but I guess
Blade.
You have to go pretty far back in pop culture to see a vampire assumed to be around the other monsters that you were talking about. 2003
or something like that, where they had a series of movies. They had the Van Helsing movie. They had.
I guess Frankenstein was in that one.
Yeah, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is another one that combines a lot of those stories together. So like in my head, those worlds kind of intersect.
All right.
Like the ones that come from the old Universal horror movies. Like I have a passion for it. I love those things.
I love Van Helsing.
I'm very, very sad that Tom Cruise ruined the new Mummy movie, which was supposed to bring all of those old ones together into a series like Marvel. Like that was their intention, to launch a world. It's called Universal Dark World, where they were going to bring all of them together and like
the horror Super League or something.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, like
it'd be so cool to watch.
Yeah, and it would be so cool to play in a world where that exists too.
So like my mind when you had mentioned that first, my mind went to like silent movies with people with terrible makeup from the 20s and 30s.
Bela Lugosi was pretty freaking rad as Dracula.
Yeah, yes, but that's where my head immediately jumped to when you had mentioned all of them together. And I guess the movies that you touched on just now just don't immediately come to mind when I think of vampires. I don't know.
If you look at the event for the Halloween one-shot last year, I actually commissioned art that was all of the original Universal Monster movies as players in D&D. They all have different classes. So I've been imagining this particular scenario for a while.
I understand that. I see. All right. And now I'd like to introduce you all to a good friend of CGA and the podcast, Tarjei Ledvina. He has contributed greatly to our numbers recently with how widely he has recommended our group. He's a great personality and is always sure to bring a smile to your face. Fair warning, the following audio was recorded in a busy restaurant environment and may not be suitable for all listening modes. It is highly recommended to lower the volume at first until you can adjust to the noisier than normal environment. Without further ado, Tarjei Ledvina.
Hey guys, this is Brendon with Sound Gaming. I'm here with Tarjei. Hello. We're going to talk just a little bit more about that honeymoon phase that we've been talking about on the podcast today. So we actually came across this idea not too long ago. We were talking about you starting up a new campaign.
Yeah.
And you're looking at Curse of Strahd?
Curse of Strahd. Yeah, it's one of those campaigns where everybody talks about it. You've read about it, and I finally got a group together that's like, hey, we want to play. I'm like, I'm really bad at making games, so you know what? Curse of Strahd it is, because I want to.
Yeah, no, this is actually really kind of cool to be able to have this conversation because we were talking earlier today with Chris Hunt, and he is more of a home brewer. So I kind of wanted to take this from the standpoint of somebody who's working with like an official WotC product, right? So you are at the point now where you're kind of in love with the idea of doing Strahd.
Oh yeah, I read like the preface, like this is what Strahd's about, and then everything that I've read since then, like I'm already making voices in my head. I'm already like imagining like what's going to happen to characters as they move along, and it's great because like it's structured, but it's not linear.
Right.
So it's I'm looking forward to it a lot.
Okay. So that's that kind of like that new relationship energy, right? Like that's kind of like your first date. Like you're picturing your future. Like you're thinking about like, oh, I'm gonna go get her flowers. That kind of moment, that kind of momentum that brings you into the campaign. I just want to say a quick note about the audio. The reason why there's so much going on in the background right now is because we're at a special event for Cascadia Gamers Alliance. This is kind of our first social of the year. We are officially today at 200 members. We actually got our 200th member.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, we are here. It's been kind of a surreal day. Somebody heard the first 2 episodes of our podcast and came down from Everett just to meet us. So it's been kind of cool on that end. But as far as like where we're going with this conversation, I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of moving from the dating stage and going into kind of the relationship stage.
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny you say dating phase because right now I'm currently in a text thread with all of my players.
Okay. That's a great tool.
One of them has played before.
Okay.
All the rest are newbies.
That's awesome.
And so I'm getting phone calls, I'm getting texts. I'm using D&D Beyond just because I have all the content and it's consolidated. But like they're all like, oh, I'm worried about like party consistency. Should we have a cleric? Should we have this? I'm like, guys, just play what you want. That's what's important.
Don't worry about it, baby. Just be you.
Just be you. So yeah, it's funny because it's kind of like that dating phase where it's like, we're just texting each other, a phone call every now and then, but we haven't had our first date.
Right. So you're just kind of there, you're kind of imagining. So I wanted to kind of like pose some questions to you about Curse of Strahd in general.
Okay.
Right? So, like my gut reaction to going into something that, like, I love horror, right? I absolutely adore doing creepy things to kind of like scare my players. but I hate vampires. Right? I feel like it's such a played out trope, and it's hard to overcome. How do you feel like you're going to be approaching that particular?
Well,
part
I mean,
of the game?
like, you can't help but think vampires and think, I'm going to suck your blood.
Yeah,
you know, and unfortunately, and almost fortunately, like Ravenloft, came to be back in the 80s.
Yeah, right.
So it was kind of before like the main media like sexualized vampires,
Sure.
and, like did little Twilight phase and all that.
Right.
It's before all that, and that's what Curse of Strahd is. It's that pre-romanticized vampire story.
Okay.
And I'm looking forward to not just the like Strahd himself as a villain is so interesting because he's just manipulative.
Right.
He wants to just decimate anybody who comes into his realm, and nobody's allowed in unless he invites them. So he knowingly wants to mess with people, and it's going to be a very interesting way to play because your main villain is made apparent right off the bat.
Which is actually kind of an interesting point, right? Because in the cosmology of D&D, Ravenloft is technically a demi-plane, right? It doesn't actually intersect with Faerun.
Well, it used to.
Yeah.
But currently it is of its own place. Like if they tried to use like planar shift or anything to try and get them out of the area, it doesn't work.
Right.
It's almost as if they're in their own minds.
Right.
In that aspect. So it should be really fun to see what the players come up with. Mainly because they're new, but also because like I can't wait to be like, oh, you try that, it doesn't work.
So are you planning on bringing them in from Faerun, or are you having them be Barovian?
So the campaign does a really good job of having story hosts.
Yeah, right.
And that's something that I struggled with. This isn't my first campaign, but it's the first one where I'm actually comfortable even before we get started.
Yeah.
I had tried doing some homebrew stuff. I tried doing Horde of the Dragon Queen, which kind of fell off. I tried doing Tomb of Annihilation.
Yeah.
And again, that was we started a homebrew campaign and moved into it. But this is like wholly organic,
right? Like
Wizards of the Coast content.
Gotcha.
So it's going to be like, because they're not starting from anywhere.
Yeah.
They don't know Faerun.
Right.
I can have them start anywhere.
Do you feel that that's an advantage or a disadvantage?
Well, I pointed them towards the Sword Coast Adventurers guide, just so they can get to know the area, get to know the gods.
Yeah.
Kind of understand where they are.
Right.
But I mean, as soon as the campaign starts, that's all out the window because you're now in
Sure.
Barovia.
Sure.
So it's just, and it's great because it's not just here's one story hook. There's I think 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I get to choose. They can either like start off in a camp and move forward, and all of a sudden there's a fog and they can't escape it.
Yeah.
Or they can receive a letter, or they get a request from a guild to go hunt some werewolves. Like it's constructed.
Yeah.
In a way that you can apply it to whoever. You know, if you got some people that like are used to storylines, you just start them and they go.
Okay.
Or so it's a lot of kind of how should I introduce the players to this campaign?
Okay. So you kind of have like first date goals, right?
Yeah.
Right. So your first date goals, you kind of have this idea, kind of this ballpark of where you could go. It's like, does she like the movies? Does she like, just like going to museums? You can kind of feel out your players, and you can kind of see, like maybe predict what like maybe the best idea would be to go from there. How does it feel applying that to like the prep?
So the prep work again. It kind of, because of the way that that this game is kind of set up. Yeah, it's because it's so open. Like Horde of the Dragon Queen is very linear. Like it's you start off in this town, help these people,
right?
All right, and then you can move on to the next place, and the next place. With Curse of Strahd, because it's so open, you have to read the entire book before you even get into, all right, guys, we're going to play our first session. Okay. You need at least an idea. Now, luckily, it also includes a quick 1 to 3 little mini campaign within it.
Yeah.
You know, the Death House.
Yeah.
So that's
kind of getting your feet wet.
Yeah, you know, it's a little mini dungeon. They can learn to play the game.
Right.
They can level up, get that feel for, okay, this is what it means to be more powerful.
Right. Right.
And then from there, it's up to them how they want to proceed. Do they go straight to Strahd? They could. It's in the book. They could go straight to Strahd and die. They're gonna die. It's just, you know, you know, you need to get certain items. You need to talk to certain people. You know, but it's up to the players to kind of weed out how that's gonna happen.
So, I mean, the way that you're talking, that's still kind of like thinking about the first date, right? Now I want to talk about you putting on your cologne, right?
Yeah.
You picking out your shirt.
You know,
right?
I need to look good. I need to be presentable, but not overly flashy and scare them away.
So what kind of physical, like actual things are you going to do to prep for day one?
So I have a plan. I'm actually meeting with my characters in 2 days.
Okay.
And we're gonna build their characters and walk them through. Again, they've never played before, so they don't know what they're doing.
Kind of like a zero session.
A zero session.
Okay.
But I mean, if we get it done fast enough, zero sessions usually turn into session 1.
Right.
You know, which is kind of like dating. You know.
Yeah. Sure.
You're like, oh, let's hang out. Oh, let's go to the movies or like grab a bite to eat, and it like turns into a date. It wasn't an intention. It's just how it turned out.
Sure.
So yeah, but I plan on, as far as physical items to bring to the table, the book has such amazing imagery.
Right.
Like most of the characters have different portraits of them or something like that. So I plan on printing out some of those pictures.
Yeah.
And like the maps that are in the book are again beautiful and they're well done. But I found I can't remember the name of it. It's either Raven something. I'm sorry.
That's right. Come
prepared. But it it's this whole PDF where it's printable buildings.
Okay.
You know, you get some cardstock, you print them out, you glue them together, but that way you can create like a little town for them to walk into, and all of a sudden, like, they can see that they're in Barovia.
So that's good. Like, I'm glad that you're already thinking about player engagement.
Yeah.
You know, maybe some minifigs, maybe some buildings.
We'll see. You know, I don't like to encourage getting minifigs at the first session.
Okay.
You know, I want them to get a feel for it. Plus, if they make like a really bad decision that ends in like a character dying, or God forbid a TPK. You know, you still want to have, you know, you still want to play. You don't want to feel like you wasted money.
That's definitely an important point, right? Your relationship is with the players, not with the player characters.
Yes.
Right, and that's a really important distinction to make as a storyteller, to realize that you're doing this for your friends, that this is about community, this is about having, like, that moment with these people. Yeah, they're expressing themselves through their character, but it's still basically the person that's playing.
Yeah, you know, it's still your friend. It's still your friend's friend or a stranger. You don't want to leave a bad impression,
right?
You know, especially if they're new to the game.
Yeah.
You know, you want them to walk away from it and think, man, I can't wait for the next session, or what are we gonna do, or even, man, this guy at work. He's been trying to get me to play D&D for a year.
Right.
I think I'm going to talk to him about that.
So that's actually a really good segue, right? So you talking to a guy at work about trying to get somebody to play for a year, you're one of the people that I know who kind of preaches the most about the benefits of D&D.
I do,
right?
I do.
So what does D&D mean to you?
So D&D for me is just a creative outlet. You know, it's a structured set of rules, but once you start playing, once you start interacting with people, it becomes so much more. It becomes a lifestyle. I mean, there's been some case studies where therapists even say that playing D&D creates memories. It's no longer, oh, hey, remember that time that you and I played and my character did this and your character did that? No, it turns into, you remember that time I jumped off the bridge and I did a somersault and threw the rope to you and you grabbed it and I swung into the dragon's lair?
Yeah.
Like, it becomes a concrete memory for you.
Right.
And that's what I love. I love playing a game and making memories with friends and even with strangers. Like, if I do a one-shot and I'm like, I've never sat next to this guy before, but man, I'm going to remember this session, that's for sure.
So, speaking of memories, like, what's kind of your earliest memories of D&D? Like, where did you get your start?
So, I started playing, like, relatively early, like, I want to say 3 years ago.
Okay.
Is when I first started playing Dungeons & Dragons, and it was only because I had some friends who had started a campaign without me.
Sure.
And I was like texting them like, "Hey guys, you want to hang out? We haven't seen each other for a while."
Yeah.
And they said, "Yeah, we've been playing D&D." I'm like, "I want to play. Like if you guys are into D&D, then I want to try it out."
Sure.
And then it turned into like I made my first character, a half-orc ranger named George Michael. I had a wolf mother. She was a white dire wolf named Faith.
Yeah.
Like I was just playing it as a joke, but man, I have so many fond memories of playing George Michael. I mean, everything from like chopping off a captain's hands with my spear and turning it into a whip, like holding up an emblem to rally a town around me, and having 40 archers stand up on a roof and point their arrows at me, and I'm just like, hold on. Sorry, my bad. I just want to talk.
Awesome.
It's great. Like I can almost recount my first campaign as if I was reading a storybook. It's one of those things where it's so personal that you become the story.
Right.
It's like, yes, you're playing a character, but it's an extension of yourself.
Right.
Especially if you play a character that's not like you normally are. You play something that's out of your wheelhouse. That's not who you are in real life.
Yeah.
But it gives you that chance to all of a sudden be that, that badass superhero who's like, I'm gonna save the day. I'm not that guy. I don't have super strength. I can't run, 10 miles an hour. Like you have this opportunity to just become something else, and that's what I love. It's the ability to just be something great.
That's an amazing story, and I really like that description. Kind of moving on from that to our kind of other question recently is, how did you come to be a part of Cascadia Gamers Alliance, and how is that kind of impacting your gaming now?
Oh man, I can't remember who told me about it. Oh, it was Kyle.
Okay.
Kyle told me about it. He was like, "Hey, we're starting this group called Cascadia Gamers Alliance." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'll check it out." And the first thing I did was the Roanoke campaign.
Sure.
I was mad because I was in the middle of doing a show, so I couldn't come to all the live events. Like, you guys went to, I think it was Allen York Park or something.
Yeah.
And like that just looked like a ton of fun. You were all out in the sun, hanging out, and I'm like you, if you look at a picture of that, you don't think those people play D&D. They're
right.
just, they're just out having fun, and that's what's really important is the community. But like I did the Roanoke thing, and I was very active in that.
Yes,
as I'm sure you remember, Brendon.
I certainly do, and I loved every second of it. Okay, yeah. So I think at this point we're gonna get back to going and have some more beer with our friends. But hey, man, thanks for being on the show.
Not a problem.
And I can't wait to see more of what comes out of your campaigns and all of like the energy that you bring to the group.
Thank you.
You're definitely one of my favorite people, so thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Right.
And with that, I want to thank you for yet again joining us for another episode of Sound Gaming Podcast. We look forward to seeing you here back next week. Thanks, and see you then.